This isn't just another beginning. It's an arrival. The culmination of every audit, every single step we've taken together. We are finalizing the rendering. Welcome to the grand design.
Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't a metaphor. It isn't some clever opening line. It's a declaration. It's the point where we move beyond the old models and acknowledge the system for what it truly is.
So to really grasp what's happening, we have to start by tearing something down. We need to deconstruct the one core belief that has defined your entire existence up to this point, the illusion of separation.
And this, right here, is the heart of it. The primary illusion you've been operating under. You believed your legacy, what you build, was somehow separate from your perception, how you see the world. You were taught that your identity was some isolated thing, distinct from the social web you're embedded in. But the clinical reality? No. There are no fragments. There is only one unified, interconnected system. There is only the grand design.
And what's the consequence of living in that illusion? Well, this is it. You end up as a scattered data point. You might have collected bits of wisdom, sure. You have tools, but you have zero architecture, no blueprint. It's the ultimate failure of the unrefined mind, the inability to synthesize all those scattered pieces into actual power.
So how do we fix that? How do we go from being a scattered point of data to the architect of a system? We have to audit the universal synthesis. We have to understand the logic.
And here's the key. True power, real sovereignty, isn't about mastering just one variable. It's about managing the entire system. It's achieved when your perception, your identity, and your execution are all perfectly synchronized, vibrating on a single, unwavering frequency. This is the birth of what the Source calls the sovereign architect.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. A big, complex equation. But don't let the symbols intimidate you. This isn't a math test. Think of it as a map, as applied existential engineering. It's the blueprint we've been missing. Let's break it down.
So, the final result, this phi symbol, what is it? It's your systemic sovereignty, the ultimate goal. It's the point where you stop being just a person living in a reality, and you become the very logic that dictates that reality.
Let's start with the top half of the equation, the numerator. This is your engine. This is your creative power. It's the product of your execution power, psi, your raw ability to act, multiplied by your perception precision, omega, the clarity with which you see the world. When these two are high, your potential soars.
But then we have the bottom half, the denominator. This is your systemic drag. These are the forces that hold you back. You've got identity entropy, that's the fragmented, chaotic self, and you've got social coupling, the pull of the herd, the external pressures that dilute your signal.
And right here, this is the most critical piece of the entire design. To achieve maximum sovereignty, you don't just focus on the numerator. You have to relentlessly suppress the denominator. When you liquidate the fragmented self and decouple from the herd, when that denominator gets closer and closer to zero, your sovereignty or power becomes infinite.
Of course, it's not that easy, is it? Because there's always resistance. And the biggest resistance isn't from the outside world, it's from within. We have to confront the shadow.
The shadow isn't some monster. It's your own fear. It's the fear of what happens when you actually become whole. The unrefined mind clings to its fragments, its traumas, its desires, its anchors. It's terrified of the silence that comes with absolute power and coherence.
So this brings us to the final, unavoidable question. You have to ask yourself this. To build the citadel, the grand design, are you willing to burn the overgrown, chaotic forest of your old self? Because you can't build on uncleared ground. It requires a total, final liquidation.
For those of you who are ready, for those who answer yes to that question, we come to the final stage, the action plan, the grand protocol for ascension.
It comes down to 3 steps. 1. Systemic integration. You cease all separation. Every single action, every thought must serve the grand design. You become a unified signal. 2. The persistence of the blueprint. You hold your vision. You are the constant, and you force the world to adapt to your logic, not the other way around. And 3. The silent governance. You operate from the void. True architects are never seen. They are only felt in the quiet perfection of the system they command.
And with that, the transition is complete. You are no longer just reacting to the world. You are creating it. Chapter 7 is closed. The work is done. The reality is yours.
The archive is now sealed.
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're doing more than just explaining a concept. We're cracking open a document. This is a direct briefing on a philosophy from a very particular source known only as the archive. And let me tell you, it presents a pretty radical and demanding way of looking at existence. So let's jump straight to its core message.
And boom, that's how it starts. No warm-up, no gentle intro, just this stark declaration. The source material immediately sets the tone. It's not asking you to believe anything, it's informing you of a new reality. So, what exactly is this simulation it claims we're all leaving behind?
So, the first thing the archive says we have to do, we have to shatter the illusion we've all been living inside. The source claims our biggest problem is one of perception. We see our lives as a bunch of scattered, messy data points, and that's what keeps us fragmented and ultimately pretty powerless.
And here it is, the big mistake we're all apparently making. We view our life as separate parts. But the archive is very clear. Your legacy, the way you see the world, your very identity, these aren't different apps on your phone. They're all interconnected data points in one single massive operating system.
This slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you've got what the source calls the unrefined mind. You're just scattered data, full of random noise, holding a bunch of tools but with absolutely no blueprint for what you're supposed to build. And on the right, that's the goal, the grand design, a unified, perfectly architected existence where all that static becomes one pure signal. It's about moving from chaos to code.
Okay, so how do you actually make that jump? How do you go from total chaos to this perfect design? Well, the archive doesn't just give us philosophy, it gives us an operator's manual. It actually proposes a governing formula, the logic of what it calls systemic sovereignty. And honestly, this is the absolute heart of the entire framework.
And there it is, the grand synthesis equation. Now, I know, it looks intense, but don't worry, this isn't going to be a math test. What we need to understand is the powerful logic that's at play here. This isn't just a formula. Think of it more like a piece of code for engineering your own reality. Let's break down what it actually means.
So let's start with the top part of that equation. This is your engine, your power. Psi is your execution power. That's your raw, unfiltered ability to get things done, to impose your will on the world. And you multiply that by omega, your perception precision. That's how clearly you see reality, with no filters, no biases. According to the source, to even get started, you have to max both of these out.
Now for the bottom part. This is the stuff the archive says you have to systematically, liquidate. First up is identity entropy. That's all the noise, the baggage of the messy, fragmented self you think you are. You add that to social coupling, which is your attachment to what the source calls the herd, right? That whole web of social expectations and attachments. These aren't just influences, they're anchors, creating massive drag on your system.
And here's where it all clicks. When you successfully get rid of that denominator, when you get the noise from yourself and society down to basically zero, what happens? Your systemic sovereignty, that phi symbol, it shoots up towards infinity. The source is very blunt about this. You stop being a person in reality, and you become the logic that writes reality. But of course, a transformation like that isn't going to be easy, is it? The archive identifies this final internal enemy it calls the fear of totality. And this isn't just another hurdle. It's like the final boss battle happening right inside your own head, designed to stop you from reaching the grand design. And the source is crystal clear about why we're so scared. To get this power, you have to become what it calls a ghost in the system. And the unrefined mind? It is absolutely terrified of this. It clings to its little fragments, its traumas, its petty desires, its social connections, because that noise is familiar, it's safe. The silence of absolute control is terrifying. The source actually frames this as a final test, the Leviathan, the whole system of normal life. It's going to fight back. It'll offer you a deal, a really tempting one. It'll promise you comfort, familiarity, a normal life, if you just give up on this crazy architecture. It's the ultimate temptation to just go back to being a piece on the board, not the player. Which leads us to the critical question, right? The one we all want to ask. Can't you have it both ways? Can you hold on to just a little piece of who you used to be, a memory, a relationship, some part of your old identity, and still become this architect?
The archive's answer is an absolute, uncompromising no. It's not a negotiation. It says that any hesitation, any belief that you can compromise, is where you fail. To build a stone citadel, the entire forest has to burn. There is no middle ground, period.
But, and this is so important, the archive forces you to reframe this. It argues this isn't about loss. This final liquidation isn't about self-destruction. It's a strategic exchange. You are trading all the fragments, all the noise, the entire forest of your old self to acquire the only asset that actually matters, the blueprint itself.
So, let's move into the final phase. For those who are actually willing to pay that price, to burn the forest, the archive lays out the last actionable steps to ascend. This is what it calls the Grand Protocol.
The protocol has 3 directives. First, systemic integration. You stop separating things. Every single action, every thought, even your silence, now has to serve the grand design. You become one unified signal. Second, persistence of the blueprint. You are the constant. The world is the variable. You do not adapt to it. You force it to adapt to your logic. And finally, number 3, the silent governance. Real architects are unseen. You only feel their presence in the perfect, flawless execution of the systems they've built.
And then, the archive just drops this on you. A hard deadline. By age 45, the job is done. The rendering is finalized. That one specific number makes this whole abstract philosophy feel suddenly jarringly concrete, doesn't it? The clock is ticking.
So what's the end state? Well, it's described as a complete shift in your very being. You go from being a reactive biological organism to a deterministic force, a systemic inevitability. According to this document, at that point, reality itself basically belongs to you.
And with that, the briefing just ends. The source doesn't offer any more help. It just seals the file, leaving you with this massive, world-altering blueprint and the silent, provocative question of what you're actually going to do with it.